After 3 years of skyrocketing prices, we're standing at a precipice. Car prices are expected to fall by over 50% in the coming months, in what is expected to be the biggest car market crash in history. But how do we get here, and what will the impact of the crash be on the companies that make automobiles and on us, the consumers that buy them? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this video, but before we proceed, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the thumbs up. It's free for you to do, but really helps our team out more than you know. Now let's dive in. Before COVID hit in 2020, the automotive industry was stagnant. Growth had dropped from a paltry 2% to just 1.4%, while in Europe, vehicle registrations actually fell by 3.9%. COVID made an already bad situation even worse, as buying a car became unimportant for most people amid stringent lockdowns. Sales in Europe fell by 21%, and sales in the US dropped by 19%, while China's car market contracted by a staggering 92% in February 2020. Through all of this, however, EVs remained resilient, and their sales grew by around 40% to account for 4% of total global car sales as a result of robust policy frameworks from the EU, US, and China that sought to mitigate climate change by setting stringent emissions limits on transportation. As the pandemic eased in 2021 and 2022, demand for cars once again began to pick up, and global vehicle sales increased by 5% in 2021 to approximately 82 million. This was still below pre-pandemic levels, but nevertheless indicated that the market was recovering. EV sales, however, grew tremendously. They surged by 109% from 2020, reaching around 6.5 million, which constituted 9% of the total passenger vehicle market in 2021. But as demand began to pick up, automakers ran into another problem. They simply weren't able to manufacture fast enough to keep pace with the once again growing demand. One of the main reasons for this was a shortage of semiconductors. These chips are responsible for more than 40% of the functioning of a modern car and are used to control everything from lights and sensors to high-tech intelligence systems. While small, chips are incredibly complex, and their manufacture demands a high degree of expertise and dedicated production facilities. Automakers typically pre-order them based on their production forecasts, and as demand slumped in the wake of the pandemic, manufacturers also cut their orders for chips, resulting in a massive chip shortage when demand began to recover. The shortage was only compounded by the fact that demand for chips actually increased in other industries as the transition to remote work drove up the use of electronic devices like mobile phones, laptops, and tablets. As a result, even after working at almost 100% of effective capacity in 2020, chip manufacturers were still a long shot from being able to meet demand. Chips, however, weren't the only thing in short supply. Russia's invasion of Ukraine also led to a shortage of metals like copper, nickel, and iron as the conflict disrupted both their production and export. And in Japan, which is home to the world's largest automotive manufacturer, Toyota, a scarcity of raw materials resulted in a 46% decline in car exports in 2021. German manufacturer Mercedes-Benz also announced at the end of 2022 that they were completely sold out in Western Europe and America for the upcoming year. As a result, prices for new cars soared, and by the end of 2020, the down payment for buying a new car had jumped from $4,300 to $4,700. Despite this, people still raced to buy cars due to low interest rates, putting further upward pressure on already high prices. Since the pandemic, the prices of new cars have increased by 30%, while those of used cars have gone up by 45% as high prices for new cars forced people into the second-hand market. Where before the pandemic, an average new car sold for around $37,000, while a used car sold for around $23,000, these numbers are now closer to $48,000 and $33,000 respectively. But now that we're out of the pandemic and the semiconductor shortage is easing, this price trend is poised to shift. Auto manufacturers who are struggling to meet demand may end up instead with a supply glut, as car prices have been pushed up to a point where consumers are no longer willing to buy. A UBS report predicts that global car production will exceed sales by 6% in 2023, resulting in 5 million extra cars that will likely be subject to price cuts. While a dramatic drop in car prices may not happen until the end of 2023, price cuts have nevertheless already started to appear. The price of the Tesla Model 3, for instance, fell by 21.5% between September 2022 and February 2023, while the price of the Honda CR-V fell by 7.3% over the same time period. Prices for used cars have fallen as well. Those for wholesale used cars fell by 2.4% in March this year, while those for some specific models fell much more significantly. A used Infiniti QX80 SUV, for instance, was around $52,000 in 2022, but dropped to $40,000 in April this year. As a result of stockpiled inventory, analysts predict the onset of price wars in the automotive industry, as companies might feel the need to resort to offering appealing deals to customers in an attempt to stimulate sales. And the EV industry, which remained resilient through the pandemic, is also not being spared. Some of these wars have already begun, and Tesla has had to reduce the price of its Model Y and Model S by $13,000 and $11,000 respectively in order to be able to compete with rising Chinese car manufacturers like BYD, a topic that I already covered in great detail in a video about Tesla and its battle with Chinese EV makers for dominance of the EV industry. Ford has since followed suit, lowering the price of its Mustang Mach-E by 8%, while Lucid Motors has slashed the price of its luxury Air sedan by $7,500. The falling demand and consequent price cuts have already begun to impact manufacturers' bottom lines, and Ford, the second largest EV maker in the US, is projected to incur a loss of $3 billion in its EV business in 2023. These price reductions, while challenging for the overall industry, could potentially be an even greater disaster for traditional combustion engine vehicles, since as electric cars become more affordable in future, consumers are likely to prefer buying them over buying traditional fossil fuel-powered vehicles. Falling prices are also likely to be exacerbated by the fact that most Americans depend on loans to buy new cars, and falling car prices mean that the value of the loan taken out to purchase a car ends up exceeding the value of the car itself. As a result, buyers are likely to hold off on making purchases till they see prices stabilizing, which is likely to further push down demand in the short run. So what does the future look like? To understand this, we could perhaps take a look at the last major downturn in the car industry that occurred between 2007 and 2009 as a result of a 50% spike in oil prices and a broader recession. The impact on the industry was severe. Car sales plunged 40%, employment in the sector fell by 45%, and two major players in the industry, General Motors and Chrysler, were pushed to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Fast forward to 2023, industry analysts predict that specific car models could experience price drops of up to 88%, and that companies might need to slash expenses dramatically by laying off workers and potentially even compromising on quality in order to be able to weather the storm. As of 2020, the automotive industry accounted for 3% of America's GDP, and it's not yet clear how the industry will make it through the current crisis. One thing, however, is for certain. If you're looking to buy a car, you might end up with thousands of dollars in savings by delaying the purchase.